So let's have a look at a couple of types of difficult people that you might encounter, and you'll probably recognize many of these. Okay, we'll just have to move this around a little bit. So these have been given kind of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs style little shortcut names, but we'll start at the top with what's known as the slumper. And that's someone who basically has no enthusiasm, who doesn't really complain about anything, but, doesn't do anything either. So the green is kind of the diagnosis part and the description of it, and then the purple box is really a way of dealing with that type of person. So if you have someone like that, really that you have to try and convince them about what they've done and what their achievements, make sure to give praise when it's due, make sure that the feedback that's provided to them is on the whole positive. That's not to say you can't give negative feedback, but it's important to support that person to avoid them becoming a slumper, is to really kind of, emphasize that positive feedback and the good things. Okay, it's fairly obvious that you need to do that, but it is maybe a difficult thing to do when someone lacks that enthusiasm and really is just sort of, ambling around zombie like. So the dumper is a common one, and that's a person who has a talent and a tendency to offload tasks that they don't want, or just in general. And really, that's when you have to get in and manage that person. And managing that person boils down to, making sure you have really clear objectives. And this is classic project management stuff, which we will be coming back to. So that's about having really clear objectives, goals for the next month, for the next week, for the next 6 months, whatever it is. And then having a very, very clear set of deadlines and a clear set of action items that have to be done. So things that need to be done by that person, so that they can't offload the tasks because they were assigned specifically to the person. Now that's, that comes into meetings as well, and that's a 101 rule for meetings. So that you should always finish the meeting with assigned actions to people. A jumper is really someone who steals the credit. And again, I think most people will have experienced someone who has done that in their workplace. And if you have someone like that, then one of the ways you can approach that is if you have a task that's given out to a team, for example, and there's 5 people in the team, then each person gives their feedback personally to the line manager or the team leader. But at a structural level, what you can also do is ensure that all the roles are very, very clearly defined, and that allows you then to give credit appropriately. So if Bob didn't do his task and you've got, feedback directly back from Sarah, Jane, and so on, then you know who you can give credit to and who you don't need to give credit to. And next we're on to the grumper. So the grumper is a complainer, okay? It's like Grumpy Dwarf. And no matter what you do, they'll always complain about it. Now, that could just be a personality issue, but one of the things that you can do to help that person is to try and help them manage what they're complaining about. So you're never going to get able to get them to stop complaining, but if you can minimize the amount of complaining that's going on, that's obviously a bonus for you. So you can make sure to identify specific things that person can do, help them to set deadlines, help them to prioritize, so that you're minimizing their opportunities to complain about things, because you've given them the attention that's needed to ensure that they can sort of work through what they need to do without either feeling overwhelmed or without having too many opportunities to complain. The bumper, again, is very similar to this idea of the dumper, but the bumper has an extra bit added into it, in that they only like taking the good stuff, but they'll also pass the blame away. So if it worked, absolutely, it was 100% them. If it didn't work, it was everybody else's fault. Now, this kind of comes back to this idea about stating roles clearly and defining exactly what people are doing. And that's really important to do at the start, but it's also really important to do when you're reviewing progress, and that should be regularly done. And what you can also do is set what's called a stretch goal, and that's basically the standard goal is to set up the new lab. The stretch goal is to set up the new lab and do that, extra specialist part of the lab. So it's not a requirement to fulfill the task, but it's something that if the task went really smoothly, this would be the next logical step. Next off is the trumper, not to be confused with Donald Trump, but that's really someone who is almost obligated by their own personality to always have the first and last word about something, always appear to be a step ahead, etc., etc. So they always want to be one up on you. So one of the things that you can do with the trumper is, make sure that you confirm in a written format, like an email or a letter, exactly what was agreed. So if you have a discussion with someone, then you can always write a follow-up email about it. You can make sure that any agenda for a meeting is very, very clear. So the idea is that you're minimizing the opportunities for the trumper to kind of get their speak in a destructive way. And you can anticipate any potential objections. So you do your homework. You kind of figure out, well, if I say this, so-and-so is going to say that, so I need to have an answer for them before they even say it. So you can then you can almost give that when you're saying your point, and you can present that solution, or the solution to the objection, so that there's no need to actually even say what the objection is, because you've just totally pulled the rug out from underneath them. And then we're on to a thumper, which is the closest thing that we'll get here to a bully. And that's really someone who's very aggressive and someone who pushes their way through, makes things happen just out of aggression, not assertiveness, aggression. Your response to that has to be assertive. Your response has to be to state your case very clearly, to stand your ground, and to ask questions of that person so that you can highlight what will happen if they continue that particular course of action. So this also gives you an opportunity to clarify specific issues and specific points. So is it correct that such and such happened? So you're just going through things factually very, very clearly and very simply, and then you're using questions as an information gathering tool. And they are kind of diffusing techniques. So those 7 are really kind of core personality types, and these have been extracted from management textbooks, which are potential sources of conflict in a workplace setting.